not always necessarily the best card that's in their hand.
I'm not denying that Thoughtseizes is a good card.
No, but you obviously don't understand the implications of being able to take a card on curve and making their draw much slower, or like setting up the turn like 3 in the turn removal spell, untap Underworld Connections, as opposed to just like taking their big spell, casting Connections on 3, untapping like.
Okay, I'll give you that. Although I still don't think that you're outplaying your opponents by casting Thoughtseize. I feel like you're casting.
I think you're putting way too much emphasis on a joke that I made, and we're just gonna leave it at that.
I just want people at home to realize that when you cast Thoughtseize, you're making a fantastic play.
I'm the best man.
So we see a Ratchet Bomb here from Chris Yarbrough. What do you think? You think is that just for Mistcutter Hydra?
Probably Mistcutter Hydra, and since he was on the play this game, I assume that is what BBD killed him with last game. It could also be a way for him to unlock his Planeswalkers from Detention Sphere, since it will sit in play and kind of be like a preemptive way to deal with that. It could also kill things like Pithy Needle on his Planeswalkers if it gets one active, etc., etc.
So BBD actually has the Brimaz in his hand. Unfortunately, he doesn't have double white.
Womp womp.
So yeah, one of the few times I've seen this deck actually get a little color screwed. He's actually pretty good with his mana for the most part.
Hopefully he has Dissolve, which he wanted to cast way more because Brimaz is really bad against Jace. So. Unfortunately for Brian, Chris actually has Mizzy Mortars in his deck too. I mean, maybe he still has Mizzy Mortars because he saw Brimaz last game as well.
Yeah.
A lot of things could have happened last game to really make sense of why these cards are in Chris's deck. And I think that Brimaz and Mistcutter Hydra are 2 of them. So Syncopate.
So good thing there. Brian has the Syncopate, so Stormbreath Dragon isn't gonna deal any trouble.
I didn't even realize Brian actually missed his 4th land drop multiple times.
Yeah, so Brian does not have, not only does he not have double white, he doesn't have a 4th mana here, but although Chris really isn't threatening him with anything, he's got a bunch of removal spells, a bunch of reactive spells in his hand.
There we go. Let's start jamming Jaces. Do we have them?
Still no double white.
I don't think we have them.
Ooh, there's a Brimaz.
All right, well, Brimaz from Chris Yarbrough here. BBD may have an answer, he may not. We shall see.
And I think Chris actually has an Is It Charm in his hand as a potential.
Oh, I don't think I recognize the picture. Is that the FNM promo, the foil?
That could be the FNM promo.
Yeah, because it looks a lot like Counterflux to me, but I know it's not.
So it looks like we're going to get a Sphinx's Revelation here for 1.
Yeah, and Chris does have the option to counter it here, but I think he wants to save it for a more important spell. However, this Detention Sphere that Brian drew would have been really, really good with the backup land to protect from Is It Charm. But it comes into play tapped.
Yes, and Chris also has the Wear and Tear for it as well, so he doesn't have to actually waste the Is It Charm on it.
Sure.
Oh, and he also has that Renounce the Guilds too. So pretty good sequence here for Chris if it does work out for him.
Well, it's definitely happening. I'm actually curious to see if Brian left Supreme Verdict in his deck because of things like Stormbreath Dragon and Brimaz. But
I wouldn't be surprised if he had a couple left in his deck.
Yeah, I mean, this could be really problematic for Brian because Chris has a lot of answers to Detention Sphere, and that is one of the easiest ways to deal with Brimaz out of the blue-white, or the banned deck, excuse me.
So he decides to use the Wear and Tear on it, saving Renounce the Guilds possibly for Kiora.
Right. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that being able to still kill something like Pithy Needle later down the line is a little more important. I mean, obviously he doesn't know what all is in Brian's deck, but if Cure is the only thing he was really worried about, the card it's fine, but it's not as game-breaking in a control matchup. It basically just draws 2 cards. It's like a 4-mana Divination.
Well, it can ultimate pretty quickly. I mean, obviously not in this situation, but okay, so it looks like we're going to get
dueling Brimazes. Chris has access to Mizzy Mortars and an Is It Charm to counter the counterspell from Brian. Also access to Negate, so this could get a little dicey.
Oh, wow. So Brian does not put up a fight. He does have a second Brimaz in his hand, so no real reason to fight for it there.
He had potential to negate, but I think he wants to save that for an opposing Elspeth or something similar.
Yeah, so Brian's still in not the worst shape right here. He's going to be able to get that.
Well, he ain't in good shape, but
not in the worst shape. Chris's hand is still. I don't think Chris's hand is that great. He's got to Renounce the Guilds, which is basically dead right here.
Yeah.
He has a negate, which again can't really do anything.
And
he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't have an answer to
Right, but he can post-combat Izzet Charm his opponent's Breamaz, but both Breamazes will die due to the 1/1 being created and blocking from Brian's Breamaz.
So let's see here. Does he want to just lead with Jace here? He has Negate. Although Brian does have a, it looks like Brian has an Elspeth in his hand.
Yeah, Brian has an Elspeth in his hand and also Negate here, so this could go Negate, untap, cast Elspeth, and then take control of the game because Elspeth just trumps Breamaz.
Yeah. So
yeah, it looks
like that is what we're going to see here.
He wants to bite so hard. You can just tell. Chris wants to bite. There we go. And now Brian's going to get an untap, play Elspeth, and take complete control of this game as long as Chris doesn't have an Aetherling.
And a Stormbreath Dragon.
Excuse me.
What were you saying?
Nothing.
But let's see here. What are we going to do? Because Chris currently just has access to 6 mana. So he can't necessarily just cast Aetherling and protect it just yet. So Brian's definitely going to play Elspeth next turn. So
well, yeah, I mean that's probably what's going to be happening. He does have Mistcutter Hydra in his hand too, so it could be interesting to see. Chris actually ends up taking the Stormbreath Dragon in the land, wanting to hit that land drop, but also knowing that he does not have the 7th land to cast the Aetherling and protect it this next turn. Where Stormbreath Dragon, if it resolves, and Brian's already used a couple of counter spells, the Stormbreath Dragon has protection from almost all the ways that Brian has interacted with it besides counters. Elspeth being one of them, but if Brian plays Elspeth here, the Stormbreath Dragon gets to hit it for 4 and keep it from ticking down to kill it.
Yeah, and the other thing is Brian's at 10, so it's certainly possible that one hit from the Stormbreath Dragon and then an activation of Monstrous can kill him in 2 turns. So
yeah,
I kind of like that play because, again, you don't want to just take Aetherling and then jam it out there if you can't protect it, which currently Chris wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, Brian's in a really tough spot here, missing those land drops early. Cost him a lot of life points. Not being able to cast Breamaz early to play defense cost him a lot of life points.
Yeah, so
and here he's sitting at 10 against a Stormbreath Dragon, an active Jace, and an opposing Breamaz. Sure, he's casting Elspeth, but you might just see the Stormbreath Dragon attack Elspeth for 4 and then not be able to kill the Stormbreath Dragon, and Brian's kind of left with not a whole lot to do.
Yeah, Chris can Monstrous the Stormbreath Dragon on his next turn, making it a 7/7, and then if Brian has 3 cards in his hand, then that should be enough for lethal that turn if Brian doesn't draw an action spell. So Brian needs like a Sphinx's Revelation there or a Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, and I
which
think
we're not even sure if he has in his deck.
Right,
anymore.
and I think Chris still has an Izzet Charm in his hand, so Brian's Sphinx Revelation isn't even going to be for that much. Or if he does do it for too much, the Izzet Charm is going to counter it. So.
Yeah, so Chris in pretty good shape here because of that Stormbreath Dragon. And, this is one of the things we're talking about where Stormbreath Dragon versus Mistcutter Hydra, both players have those cards in their hands right now, although because Brian was just so far behind early on, Stormbreath Dragon, even though I agree with you, Mistcutter Hydra is probably a little more effective, it looks like Stormbreath Dragon might win this game for Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that how Breamaz actually changes how much better Mistcutter Hydra is versus Stormbreath Dragon, because in a vacuum, I think in the matchup, Mistcutter Hydra is just better, but here it's just getting completely brick-walled, whereas the Stormbreath Dragon is just taking over the game. And I think that Brian, I mean, obviously he knew that the Stormbreath Dragon was there, but I think that it was just a big mistake to play the Elspeth when he did, because now the the Monstrous on Stormbreath Dragon is just going to kill him, except for Kior's +1. GG, boys!
Well, that was a nice draw for Brian.
Yeah, for sure. So the Kiora from Braun going to lock down the Stormbreath Dragon.
Chris does have a Renounce to Gills though, but I'm not. I think Brian actually drew a Dissolve as well.
Yeah,
so
but if he
needs to wait.
Yeah, if Chris end of turn plays Renounce the Guilds, then he can't Izzet Charm. But if he just waits and untaps and plays patiently, then he's going to be able to just like wreck Brian next turn.
And he's making a smart play here. So now he can actually. So he's going to just cast Renounce the Guilds first. I thought he might down-tick Jace, but it looks like he showed the Renounce the Guilds, but he's rethinking his plan here.
Yeah.
So
just because you show your opponent a spell doesn't mean you're casting it.
So he has a lot of options. Obviously, Monstrous-ing Stormbreath Dragon is terrible here because of the Kira's ability. He probably wants to maybe down-tick Jace first, get some cards in here, make sure he draws maybe another counter spell.
Yep, and that Gainsay should probably close the door on Brian here.
Yeah, so we're going to see Gainsay or no. Gainsay is going to come into Chris's hand, and now we're going to see Renounce the Guilds.
Yeah, so Renounce the Guild is going to take care of Kiora. Brian going to have to draw another answer here. And, yeah, I mean, with how stacked Chris's hand looks right now, it's going to be really hard for Brian to get out of this. I mean, the Gainsay can
well, there's an interesting scenario here because I think Brian might have another Elspeth in his hand. So if Chris casts Renounce the Guild, and then Brian actually counters it. Oh, so he's going to wait until Brian's turn. So he wisely waits until Brian's turn on his upkeep.
Well, I actually don't like this play that much. Oh, that's actually pretty good. So he's going to Dome Brian here for 3 damage.
It looks like he's going to try to redirect it to Kiora.
Yeah, that's a really heads-up play, I think. I mean, maybe you just want to...
It's a little risky because if Brian just has a way to get rid of a card in his hand, then that Kiora stays in play, right?
Right. I maybe that's he just like, oh, I can ultimate my I can Monstrous my Stormbreath Dragon and kill your Kiora. I'm gonna do that instead of bottlenecking your counter spell with my Renounce the Guilds, using as a charm to counter your counter spell, and also just using Stormbreath Dragon to actually kill you next turn. So an interesting play, one that I mean, I don't actually know which one's correct. Maybe he's just really scared of some other multicolored card in Brad's deck.
I don't know. I think you cast Renounce the Guilds there because you're basically giving up damage. And what is that Renounce doing for you right here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's got a Symbol of the Legion kind of rotting in his hand.
Especially because you have a Gainsay.
Yeah.
You have a Gainsay if you're afraid of a second Renounce Kiora.
Yep.
But here we're going to have Elspeth. Elspeth's going to yeah, that's what I was mentioning about the last turn.
So
he has the second Elspeth, and now he can't counter it.
Yep.
So if he was able to Gainsay there, he cast Renounce the Guild, Brian probably lets it resolve. Then he goes Elspeth. He can cast Izzet Charm, and then he can cast Gainsay on the dissolve. Or actually, no, he will be able to cast
he would have just been able to pay for the Izzet Charm.
So yeah, I don't think there's a way for him to protect his Stormbreath Dragon this turn.
Yeah. I think burning the... I mean, in all things considered, it turned out in a more positive way for Chris Yarbrough that he did it his way. However, the only play that makes that better, I think, is if Brian has a second Elspeth. So I'm not sure if it was actually technically correct, the best kind of correct.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a top deck Mizium Mortars would be great here for Chris.
Oh yeah, just kill all Brian's creatures. He gets to use Bremaz to kill Elspeth.
Or Elspeth.
Elspeth of his own. Not so bad.
Not the worst.
So bad.
Give him something to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that casting Elspeth is probably better than, and then you still get to hold up for Gainsay. But it's probably better than casting a Symbol of the Legion, I guess. I guess the best Planeswalker in the format is better than a Symbol of the Legion. But.
Yeah, you cast Elspeth now, assemble next turn.
You know, I don't want to sound biased here, but I am biased. I am really glad the BBD got out of that situation. Because that looked dire.
As a commentator, you're not supposed to be biased. You're supposed to be just impartial.
But I am a guest commentator, and guest commentators are allowed to be partial, as long as they're still adding relevant information to the broadcast.
Fair. I'll give you that one.
Plus, come on. I can do whatever I want. They might cut me off.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, I'll do what I want.
So BBD still has that Mistcutter Hydra in his hand, but
yeah, the Ratchet Bomb on one
holding it back.
just holding it. You know, not to mention the tokens upon tokens from the other side of the table, but yeah, I mean, he has a Dissolve in hand still, I think, but that can get countered pretty easily with the Gainsay. But Brian here with a reasonable Elspeth advantage, although Chris's will get to ultimate first, but Brian has enough to be able to pressure his opponents without really sacrificing too much.
Yeah, so 3 of the tokens will die to Chris's tokens, and then 2 more can die to the Bremaz and the Bremaz trigger.
Yeah.
So Chris's Elspeth will go down to 3.
Yeah, and Brian loses 4 tokens. Chris loses 3 tokens. Brian killing the 1/1 off of the Bremaz with his guy. And Elspeth taking 2. Now, it's important to note that in a Bremaz fight, defense always wins. So it's really awkward to attack your Bremaz into your opponents because you do get the 4th point of power off of the blocking Bremaz, whereas the attacking token doesn't get to like directly attack the opposing Breamaz.
Yeah.
So if you're going to see two Breamazes in play, it's not very likely they're going to be attacking into each other.
So here, Chris, it looks like he's going to cast a Assemble Legion.
Yep. He's going to go for a Dissolve here. That's probably going to get gainsayed on the swing back, and then it's going to resolve, and it could be a problem for Brian. I mean, there's just so much going on right now and so many tokens in play that my brain is just melting.
My brain is just melting here. So, yeah, right now I would say Chris has the advantage. I mean, he's got just more token generators. Brian doesn't really have much going on in his sideboard. Elspeth's pretty far away from going ultimate before I think the Assemble could kind of do him in, just because Brian's at 10. But and then Brian just drew a land there, so he just has that Mistcutter Hydra and a land in his hand right here. So all things being equal, I think Chris has the slight edge right here.
Yeah, I agree.
But he's not threatening lethal right away. I mean, he's going to take a couple of turns.
I mean,
a
symbol will get out of hand very quickly, so that's not something to underestimate. Now, what's going to happen more than likely is that a symbol is going to be ineffective for probably the first, I want to say
3 turns.
Three, maybe 4 turns it's active, simply because Breamaz is able to block and kill one while also generating a guy. But I mean, the one would kill the other one.
Yeah, so you get 1 token, then you have 3 tokens, then you have 6 tokens, then you'll have 10 tokens. So at that point, I think, with Elspeth constantly triggering up, plus the Breamaz, I think at that point,
yeah,
Brian's in trouble. So probably 3 turns.
Yeah. Here might actually be a good spot to just cast a gigantic Mistcutter Hydra. I mean, you don't really have a whole lot going on. I mean, maybe you cast for a Mistcutter Hydra for everything except for a 1 land and a Mutavault so that you can have an extra blocker. It won't really force Chris to block, but he can at least eat a token from Chris's side if he doesn't want to blow up the Ratchet Bomb. But now that'll turn on the future Mistcutter Hydras that Brian could potentially draw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this play. You got to force the issue at some point, right?
What he's also doing, it looks like here, is he's actually threatening to potentially kill the Elspeth or shrink it significantly. Chris is going to have 4 blockers. Brian has well more than 4 attackers, all going at Elspeth. And the Ratchet Bomb going to take care of the Mistcutter Hydra. We're probably going to eat the Mutavaults, eat 3 tokens, or we could potentially eat the Breamaz and the Mutavault and just let Elspeth die.
I think you have to block Breamaz there, right?
Yeah, you Breamaz on Breamaz, and then you just probably double block the Mutavault, or maybe just trade off 3 tokens for 3 tokens.
So
just,
the Mutavault has to get chump blocked too, I think, in order for it to not be lethal.
Well, yeah, I think...
how much damage?
I think Elspeth's dying regardless. I don't think there's enough to... Or is it only going to be 3 damage?
Oh, so he's got the Izzet Charm too. So
right.
He's going to be the Izzet Charm, the Mutavault. The 3 tokens are going to bounce off each other. And then, yep, it looks like Elspeth's still going to stick around.
Yeah,
so
she's going to go to 1, but we put a huge dent in her, and one of us has, 6 tokens still, versus 1 Assemble coming in and 3 Elspeth tokens. And potentially a Breamaz token, though we do have 4 creatures we can block it with and potentially threaten it.
So it looks like it's another Izzet Charm there, maybe, I can't tell. Yeah, he can activate the Elspeth to get 3 more tokens.
Yeah, if that symbol doesn't have Vigilance, sir, so that's got to get tapped. But if he quad blocks the Breamaz here, the Izzet Charm actually is just going to be able to sweep 4 tokens away, which is really gross when you're almost at parity with tokens.
So Brian here, tough spot. Does he want to try to go for it here?
I mean, in my opinion, you should, because if you're... I mean, maybe the fact that he's attacking is kind of showing his hand. Like, maybe he doesn't attack with the Breamaz if he doesn't have the removal spell.
I think you basically got to put your opponent on it, right? You got to figure, is he making a mistake here, or does he have it,
Yeah.
I think you have to trust that he's good. He's been playing fine up to this point. I don't think there's any reason not to kind of trust him.
I really like the triple chump here, or, you trade chump. That's not terrible, but Brian needs to top deck Sphinx's Revelation, and he needs to pay 2 less mana for it. Otherwise, he's in real bad shape. Assemble plus Elspeth versus Elspeth.
Another land for the turn. So 2 lands in a row for Brian. It's really tough. He's doing everything he can here with that Elspeth, but he's facing down, an opposing Elspeth, and even though he's going to be able to ultimate first, I'm not sure it's going to be in time because that, like we said, the Assemble Legion basically needs like 3 turns.
Yeah.
So Elspeth probably won't be able to get there.
Yep. And it's always unfortunate when you're playing white border planes in your deck, because then you draw white border planes and you don't want to be alive anymore.
It's pretty much the worst feeling in the world. Yeah. I can't believe a Star City Games employee would be allowed to play with such ugly lands. You guys don't have APAC lands in the
as I said,
in the vault?
We do whatever we want. That's not true. I get yelled at a lot.
Need assistance?
All right. I guess we're just replacing tokens here. I don't really know what's going on.
So yeah, it looks like we're going to get the actual type of tokens in play here. So we have soldiers and red-white soldiers.
Sure. The red-white soldiers, I think, are new art by Kristen Pleskow, I believe. But those tokens are definitely sweet.
So 5 tokens coming. I assume they're coming at BBD. We'll get a confirmation as to that because BBD is at 10, so he might just try to jam him.
Yeah. Oh no, it looks like they're all coming at Elspeth. So we're on max prevent damage. All the tokens die except for the ones that are about to get made by Elspeth. Man, a sick blowout here would be Fated Retribution, but I know that no one's playing it, and I'm really sad about it.
Oh, a Detention Sphere. So Detention Sphere is...
I mean, that could actually just put Braun in a spot where he can come back if he hits the Assemble the Legion. Because, I mean, he's obviously falling a little far behind because he has the Bree Mass to deal with on top of the opposing Elspeth and the tokens that are left over from the Assemble the Legion. But this actually gives him a fighting chance to come back.
But the problem with that is Chris still has that Renounce the Guild, so it's actually the perfect target.
Yep.
Because now he won't have to sacrifice his Renounce Assemble the Legion. So he'll get a counter on his upkeep.
I'm sure that was what he planned 12, 13 turns ago.
I think, that
exact thing.
He just set it up perfectly.
And I now just feel like a big old dummy. He also, to be fair, he could have just cast Renounce the Guilds earlier. So, and then cast Wear and Tear right there, and it would have been exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same, yeah.
So, I don't know.
You get a little style points, I think.
What do you want from me?
So, Chris is going to attack again. It's probably the same attack, everything coming at Elspeth again. Brian just has 3 blockers, so it doesn't look like Elspeth can actually survive this attack if that is, in fact, what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, if they're coming at Brian, he has to figure out a way to block profitably enough to survive, but it's going to be real hard to dig out of this one. Looks like Chris just piling on here, and it looks like all of them were going at Elspeth. Brian opts to not trade, leaving 3 guys in play.
This is a pretty impressive token deck by Chris here.
Yeah. Just red, white, blue token control. That's not what it's called.
So Brian, again, doesn't look like he's too happy with this board state. Well, you know him better than me. Do you think he's happy right now? I can't really tell. You would know his emotions and his facial expressions better than me.
You don't have to be a science doctor to tell when someone's in a really bad spot. That man grabbing his head and just like looking completely defeated. That man is not happy.
There aren't that many science doctors in the world, so I agree with you. I mean, good old-fashioned science doctoring just ain't what it used to be.
I agree. I have no idea. I mean, I'm looking at Brian's deck list. The only card I think he could have drawn to not be dead here is maybe a Jace to +1.
That'd be a pretty big game, right?
Yeah, that would be insane. And it would buy him maybe enough time to find Sphinx's Rev to actually get out of it. But maybe it's just... Actually, it looks like it's D-Sphere. And hilariously enough, the tokens from Assemble the Legion are named Soldier. So they all died to Detention Sphere.
So it's a good thing we got those tokens clearly marked as to which ones are
However, I don't think it kills Cat Soldier.
No.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Thankfully, he will have a cat soldier. But what does he go after here? Does he go after Elspeth?
Well, if he goes after Elspeth, he's just dead on board, right?
Yeah, so he has to go after Assemble the Legion?
I mean, he blocks 1, 2, 3, takes 3, 6, 7. I guess he survives one more turn. So now he can draw a Verdict. If he left them in his deck, he can draw Jace, which can invalidate the tokens.
Yeah, so we're going to need in order for Brian to win this game, realistically, we're probably going to need Elspeth.
There's a
adjacent
white
to
card in
Elspeth.
Chris's hand that I don't know what it is. It might be Revoke Existence. I know it's white and maybe it's the new picture on Revoke Existence, but I'm not positive. Can we see if he has that in his deck?
Yes, I believe he does have. Oh no, he does not have a Revoke Existence in his deck.
He has a white card in his hand that I cannot read.
He does have Fated Retribution in his main.
Maybe that's what it is.
No, it's a Brimaz. It is a Brimaz.
It's another
yeah.
Brimaz. Okay.
And he drew Sphinx of Revelation for the turn as well. So
Well, that's Goulet.
let's see what he decides to do this turn.
I'm
my
gonna go
guess
with
is going to be attack. Yeah.
And then activate Elspeth, and then cast Sphinx's Revelation against the opponent with no cards in hand and the control mirror.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm not sure.
Oh no.
I'm not sure you want to cast Sphinx of Revelation just here. You want to bluff a counterspell.
All right, that's fair. Could bluff a counterspell.
So 3 more tokens are going to get made with Elspeth here. BBD has no cards in his hand. Nothing going on for him.
The Grim Reaper's knocking on his door. Not literally,
Figuratively.
figuratively. I need to stress that. It's very important that I stress that.
So it looks like we're going to get a Sphinx of Revelation for 6, it looks like. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, no, just 5. So not totally backbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't believe he played a land this turn yet, so if he draws a land dissolve, that'd be pretty good.
Yes, I guess with, 8 cards in his hand and a complete board versus his opponent with no cards in hand at 2 life with no board. It's very important.
That's exactly what happened.
It's a very important he draw a dissolve.
Yeah, he needs to make sure. He needs to dissolve here.
Cyclozor's Charm. Okay, Revoke Existence on the Detention Sphere, giving back a Sum of the Legion and the Handshake. So, unfortunate for my friend Brian. He is unlikely to make top 8 now at 7-2. But I'm going to cross my fingers and hope tiebreakers go his way and some people don't draw in the last round. And
anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything
That's
can
magic.
happen. That's magic. Sometimes you beat John Finkel. It just happens. Not often.
Not
and
often.
I don't do it. It does happen sometimes.
John Finkel's lifetime record is only like 65%.
Well,
that's
he had
not that good.
he had that really bad streak back when he was 15, and he went like 0-87. And that really messed with his overall win percentage throughout the rest of his career.
Yeah, if you look at his post